Good morning, students. Another beautiful day today. We are looking at exploring Earth 6-3. So, at the beginning, we talked about erosion, weathering, deposition. In 6-2, we talked about river erosion and more specifically the three types of rivers. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about mass wasting. Well, it's a beautiful day outside in Uniontown, Ohio. There are some different types of mass wasting. And mass wasting is any downhill movement of a large mass of rocks or soil because of gravity. So, mass wasting is just like I said, a large movement of rock and soil. A couple different types. The first type is called a landslide, and you're probably all familiar with a landslide. This is a sudden, a quick movement of soil, loose rocks, and boulders. So out in California, when they have lots of rain, they have a lot of landslides, and lots of land ends up flowing downhill in a hurry. A creep is like a slow motion landslide. So creeps occur very, very slowly. I wanted to show you this. This is a picture of a landslide. You can see the side of the mountain just eroded away very quickly. You see it kind of took out a lot of the road. In the movie, I gave you the YouTube movie. You saw some small examples of landslides. The one that a lot of people don't recognize is called a creep. And a creep occurs when the large mass of is flowing down the mountain, and it slowly does that. And these trees, you'll see a U-shaped tree because every time it moves down, the tree continually wants to grow up to see the sunlight, and you'll see U-shaped bottoms of the trees. That's indication that we've got slow creep taking place here. We're going to skip over these. These are some questions that you'll have in your notes, but we'll skip over them. And then the last portion deals with glaciers. And a glacier is just a large mass of ice that's formed by land and it moves slowly across Earth's surface. So you think of it like a slow motion, like a river, but instead of flowing river, it's an ice. It's a river made of ice. A couple different types of glaciers. We have something called an alpine glacier. These are the ones that we typically think of in the mountains, flowing downhill. They're kind of like a road going through the mountains. We see a picture of that. Another type is called an ice sheet. And the difference is ice sheets tend to build up in the middle. And then as they build up, they squish down and they kind of force the outside out. Kind of like if you took a handful of jello and threw it in the middle of the table, it'd sort of like a run out in all directions. It would spread out. And that's what happens with ice sheets. So it's thickest in the middle and it pushes out at the end. That's what our ice age is. That's what we were covered with 20,000 years ago, was an ice sheet all across this area right here. We know that glaciers can do three different things. They can weather, they can grind down rocks, they can also erode, which means those when they grind down the rocks and turn them into pebble and sediment, then they move that. And glaciers act like a bulldozer. As they come through an area, they push all the material with it in front of it and it collected inside. They can also scrape rock and kind of act like sandpaper, and they can put big scratches in the rocks as they pass over the rocks. And when glaciers form valleys, they form U-shaped valleys. So rivers form V-shaped valleys, glaciers form U-shaped valleys. These are some pictures of my kids and their cousins. We went to Kelly's Island. You can see this in your notes. You notice the U-shaped. These were all places where a glacier came through and basically eroded away and scraped away U-shaped valleys. So this is in Kelly's Island. You'll see some more of these. You'll see at the bottom, you'll see the grooves because rocks get trapped under the glacier, and as it moves along, it gouges the rocks below. You'll see some more here. These are all glacial scrapings. You'll see some more here. And these are all examples when a glacier comes through and rocks get trapped on the bottom, it scrapes grooves in the bottom rocks. This is me in New York City. You'll see this in your notes. It was really cold that day, but I'm standing in Central Park, and if you look below, you'll see in the background, you'll see some skyscrapers. This is Central Park in Manhattan, northern Manhattan. You'll see all these lines, and these were formed from glaciers. When glaciers came through New York City 20,000 years ago, Once again, they form these striations. These are grooves that are caused by glaciers. I'm pointing to the striation here, indicating the grooves in the rock. And then glacial erosion moves the sediments. Glacial deposition, as we know, drops the sediments. So as the glacier melts, all the things inside the glacier, the sediments, the large rocks, the boulders, the soil, all gets dropped. And till is just anything that a glacier drops. So a pile of rock that a glacier drops is till. The ground that all that is till. A moraine is a mound or a ridge of till. So a moraine is made of till. We have end moraines around this area. We see a lot of mounds in this area. Those were formed when the glaciers came here. This is where the glacier stopped, and whatever was inside of the glacier melded and dropped all the sediments. So we get sediment from middle Canada that was brought here by glacier 20,000 years ago. Outwash, this occurs when the glacier melts. All that sediment, sometimes some of that sediment gets kind of washed out. And you'll see here, this is glacial outwash here. So at the bottom here, this is all the sediment that was inside the glacier. And when the glacier melted, it came out of the glacier. And we still have outwashes today. Here's an example of an end moraine right here. So the glacier at one point was here. And as it melted, it dropped the sediment where it's at. We see a picture here. You'll see these diagrams in your notes. These are some different types of glacial depositions. This is called a drumlin. And drumlins are unique. When the glacier melts and it retreats and it goes backwards as it retreats and melts, these drumlins are left. They're kind of like the back of a fish, and they always swim towards where the glacier is melting, okay, where the glacier came from, the retreating glacier. So we see here, this is a diagram of a drumlin field. These are very unique. As the glacier melts, it drops the sediment in piles, and as it moves, as it retreats, as it melts, it drops them in pile. It always swims towards the retreating glacier. The next one's pretty interesting too. These are called eskers. And as a glacier starts to melt, and as rivers start melting into the glacier, if you look at eskers, they look like a long ridge, almost like a snake across the ground. These are where the rivers melted their way through the glacier. When they melted their way through the glacier, all the sediment that was inside of that glacier ends up forming a riverbed. And this is what's left over from that ancient riverbed when the glaciers melted. So that's called an esker. The next one is called a kame. So if a river melts its way through a glacier, sometimes we have lakes that form at the top of a glacier as it melts. Those lakes form lake beds. And as the lake melts its way through the glacier, it forms a mound called a kame. And then a kettle lake is basically what's left over. This is the indention that the glacier left. And as the glacier melts, it forms a little pot-shaped lake. So they call them kettles because they're shaped kind of like a pot. So hope you enjoyed. Have a good day. Goodbye.